I was stunned when my friend Benjamin casually informed me that he had sold the house I inherited from my father for $660,000. The news came through during a phone call from the hospital, and his tone, unsettlingly cheerful, only added to my confusion. As if that weren't enough, he mentioned his plans to go on a trip with his mistress. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Why would he sell a house that held so much sentimental value to me? And as if this betrayal weren't enough, he casually dropped that he was planning to leave his family behind, including our daughter, Nancy. His attitude toward her, complaining that she was becoming too arrogant and annoying, struck me with such fury that I could barely contain myself. How could he be so callous about his own daughter? I felt a storm of anger and disbelief wash over me. Everything seemed out of control, and I knew I had to act fast to stop him from making such a reckless decision about the house. My name is Charlotte, and I'm 39 years old. For the past several years, life with my husband, Benjamin, and our 9-year-old daughter, Nancy, has become increasingly difficult. Our marriage, once full of promise, has been strained, mostly due to my suspicions of Benjamin's infidelity, though I had no concrete proof. His late nights out, the unfamiliar scents on his clothes, and the expensive gifts he bought that weren't for me all raised red flags. Still, I couldn't bring myself to confront him, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. Looking back, I remember the Benjamin I first fell in love with. He was kind and sincere, and our marriage began as a dream. But things began to shift when Nancy turned 1. Parenting was harder than I expected, and as a full-time homemaker, I needed Benjamin's help with daily tasks, baths, meals, and the like. But instead of stepping up, he grew resentful. He started to argue that, since I stayed home, I should be the sole caregiver. His withdrawal deepened, and he would often retreat to the bedroom, leaving me to handle everything. Even when he was home, he avoided spending time with Nancy, telling her that playing was my job and he was too busy. He became dismissive of her needs, and if she cried, he would blame me for bad parenting. To shield Nancy from his harsh words, we often retreated to our room, where we would play and talk in peace. What once felt like a partnership had become a lonely existence, and I found myself navigating the challenges of motherhood mostly on my own. Over the years, my frustration grew. I longed for some personal time, to read a book, watch a movie, but living with Nancy left me with little opportunity for self-care. Meanwhile, Benjamin indulged in his car racing hobby, escaping into a world of his own. I couldn't help but feel resentful, but I hesitated to speak up. We depended on his income, and I felt powerless to change anything. As the years wore on, Benjamin's detachment and harsh words became routine, leaving me longing for the thoughtful, caring man I had once married. Instead, I found myself shouldering the weight of our marriage and family alone. Despite the mounting challenges, I knew that keeping things stable for Nancy was crucial, as our livelihood depended on Benjamin's income. One afternoon, while Nancy and I were drawing together, she told me how much she admired my artistic skills and suggested that I could turn drawing into a career. It was a rare moment of encouragement, especially considering Benjamin's frequent dismissiveness toward my talents. Yet, Nancy, in all her forthrightness, had grown into a cheerful, honest, and confident young girl, qualities that contrasted sharply with my more reserved nature. It was heartening to watch her thrive at school, where she was popular among her friends and well-loved by her teachers. Her praise for my drawings boosted my confidence, reminding me how much she noticed and appreciated my efforts. In the midst of everything, her positivity was a beacon, and as long as Nancy could find reasons to smile, I felt I could push through our family's ongoing struggles. That evening, however, the familiar pattern returned. Benjamin came home drunk and collapsed in the living room. His drinking had become a serious concern, and I struggled to get him out of his jacket. As I did, a receipt fell from his pocket, a motel receipt, confirming my worst fears about his infidelity. I quickly hid the paper, trying to mask the turmoil building inside me. The weight of the discovery kept me awake that night, wondering how to confront Benjamin about this betrayal. The next morning, Benjamin left the house early, barely sober. Just before Nancy woke up for school, I was left alone with my thoughts, surrounded by the humdrum of daily chores. The receipt in my hand seemed to make it impossible to ignore the truth any longer, and the facade of a happy marriage felt increasingly fragile. I knew I had to confront him soon, but the thought of it felt overwhelming. I needed answers, and perhaps an apology, though I wasn't sure if I would get either. A few days later, while I was still grappling with the situation, my phone suddenly buzzed, snapping me from my thoughts. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen, making me uneasy. When I answered, the voice on the other end introduced themselves as a staff member from General Hospital. They told me that Benjamin had been rushed to the ER and was undergoing emergency surgery for a severe kidney condition. The doctor explained that his situation was critical and that he might need a kidney transplant. Despite all the pain he had caused me, his mocking, his infidelity, I was taken aback by the news. In that moment, a rush of conflicting emotions flooded over me. I didn't want to lose him, and I found myself clinging to the hope that he would recover. That night, I couldn't help but think about the surgery ahead, and the daunting reality of what it might mean for our future. As the search for a kidney donor began, I was shocked to learn that I was the best match for Benjamin. It was an unexpected twist, given the strain in our relationship, and it added a whole new layer of complexity to our already tangled lives. Benjamin's parents, despite their age, were also deeply concerned, and the decision to donate a kidney became a moral dilemma for me. Though my health wasn't perfect, I was still the best donor option due to our compatible blood types, and with Benjamin having no siblings, the responsibility fell to me. The idea of undergoing surgery was daunting, and I had serious reservations. But as I thought about the irreplaceable role Benjamin played in Nancy's life, I knew I had to put our troubled past aside. I made the difficult decision to go ahead with the transplant. When I told Nancy about Benjamin's condition and the surgery, she took it surprisingly well. She understood and supported my decision, staying with my in-laws during my recovery. Despite their health issues, they were able to care for her, and knowing she was in good hands gave me peace of mind. With that reassurance, I underwent the kidney transplant, which, to my surprise, was completed more quickly and smoothly than I had expected. I spent about a week in the hospital, while Benjamin needed 8 days to recover. Thankfully, there were no complications, and both of our recoveries went smoothly. Just before I was due to be discharged, my phone rang, sending a shiver of apprehension through me. I answered, bracing for yet another unexpected twist. When I heard Benjamin's voice on the other end, I expected gratitude for the life-saving donation and wanted to know how he was recovering. But the conversation quickly took a shocking turn. In an unnervingly cheerful tone, he told me that he had sold our house for $660,000 and was planning a trip with his mistress. The news hit me like a lightning bolt. That house wasn't just any property, it was a cherished inheritance from my father, now carelessly sold off. As if that wasn't enough, Benjamin casually mentioned his mistress, adding another layer of shock to an already overwhelming situation. Still trying to process everything, I asked about our daughter Nancy, desperate to know how she was coping. Benjamin's response was as cold as it was shocking. He didn't care and planned to leave her behind. His indifference toward our daughter left me both enraged and heartbroken. The thought of him abandoning her, along with everything else, was incomprehensible. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let Benjamin recklessly dispose of our home or abandon Nancy. But as the call ended abruptly, I was left in a daze, struggling to comprehend his decisions while desperately trying to figure out how to protect our home and Nancy's future. The stress of it all worsened my condition, leading to an extended stay in the hospital. 4 days, I lay in bed, feeling helpless and distressed. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what to do next. Despite my fury at Benjamin's actions and his affair, my primary concern was for Nancy. Without our house, we would have nowhere to live. I called my in-laws' house, where Nancy was staying, and anxiously asked how she was coping with everything. To my surprise, Nancy's response was calm and collected. She told me she had been handling the situation, explaining that her father had instructed his mistress to sell the house. I couldn't help but feel both surprised and proud of how maturely she had taken control of the situation. She reassured me that everything was fine and expressed her gratitude for my concern. Her composure brought a sense of relief I hadn't expected. Encouraged by Nancy's strength, I felt a bit of peace settle within me. However, my curiosity about Benjamin and his mistress lingered, reminding myself that I needed rest. I finally allowed sleep to take over. 4 days later, I was discharged and headed to my in-laws' house. When I arrived, Nancy greeted me with a bright smile, and my mother-in-law welcomed me back with warmth, her gentle smile bringing me comfort. But my father-in-law's expression was grim, and he apologized for Benjamin's actions. I was still struggling to understand how Benjamin could stray so far from the values instilled by his wonderful parents. While they apologized, I couldn't help but wonder if I should have spoken up sooner. As we talked, my in-laws assured me that they would not let Benjamin have his way. Nodding in agreement, Nancy and I decided to head home. However, on our way, we encountered an unexpected scene outside a realtor's office. There, we saw Benjamin, looking disheveled, in a heated argument with an unfamiliar woman, his mistress. Benjamin, wearing sweatpants and with his hair a mess, looked visibly distressed. His mistress, dressed in a short skirt and only one high heel, seemed frustrated as she argued loudly about the house not selling and the $660,000 deal falling through. The chaotic scene before us only added more confusion to our already complicated situation. Benjamin's angry gestures and the mistress's loud complaints drew curious stares from passers-by. Nanae and I, equally taken aback, stepped forward to ask what was going on. When I questioned Benjamin about his actions, both he and his mistress looked startled, gasping in surprise. Without missing a beat, Benjamin accused me of sabotaging the sale, suggesting I'd somehow talked the buyer out of it. Ignoring their unfounded accusations, I instinctively moved to protect Nanae. Stepping in front of her, I was determined to face the mess head-on. Benjamin and his mistress continued to rant, but I stood firm, deeply troubled by how far they were willing to go. The realtor, clearly caught off guard, looked at me with disbelief when I revealed I was Benjamin's wife. It was evident the cancellation of the deal had completely thrown off their plans. In a moment of bitterness, Benjamin pointed to his mistress and admitted he still had debts from the lavish spending on her. It hit me like a wave. The house wasn't just a property to him. It was a way to cover his debts and provide for them both. Despite knowing the house was a cherished inheritance from my father, he was ready to throw everything away, disregarding both me and Nanae in his pursuit of this new life. My anger flared as I confronted him. He didn't back down, continuing to hurl insults with shocking disregard for any sense of decency. I demanded to know how he could even think of selling our house without my consent, asserting that I was the rightful owner. My frustration grew as I wondered if he'd even gone so far as to forge documents to push the sale through. Then, Nanae stepped forward, revealing a surprising twist. Benjamin had been bad-mouthing the buyers of the house, unaware that they were actually his parents. This revelation about my in-laws' involvement came from Nanae, who had shared Benjamin's actions with them. Furious at their son's betrayal, my in-laws had decided to step in and protect both me and Nanae. With confidence, Nanae explained that her grandparents were fully aware of the house's importance and had strongly disapproved of its rushed sale. In a calculated move, Benjamin's parents had pretended to buy the house before anyone else could intervene. Faced with this deception, Benjamin, now desperate and defeated, let out a mocking, vulgar laugh before launching a bitter verbal attack on Nanae and her grandparents. But Nanae remained poised, unaffected by his tirade. As the tension mounted, I pulled a piece of paper from my bag and thrust it under Benjamin's nose, ready to confront him with irrefutable evidence. The scene unfolding before us revealed the painful complexities of family dynamics and the extreme lengths one would go to protect their loved ones. I held up the divorce papers and declared firmly, "I want a divorce." Instead of realizing the gravity of the moment, Benjamin snorted in disbelief, mocking me and questioning how I would survive without him. Unperturbed by his arrogance, I calmly decided it was time to break his misguided assumptions. "Don't worry," I said, my voice steady. "I'm about to receive a lifetime gift from your parents." I revealed that despite everything, his parents had stepped in to support Nanae and me, ensuring we would be taken care of. This was not just the end of a marriage, but a move to secure a stable and safe future for us both. Benjamin and his mistress were visibly stunned when I shared the news that I had already been given a significant pre-inheritance gift from my in-laws. I explained that, due to their own health concerns, they had decided to transfer part of their wealth to me sooner rather than later. Initially, I had thought Benjamin might be the beneficiary of their generosity, but my in-laws had made it clear that they felt I deserved it more, especially since I had given them a beloved granddaughter. They expressed disappointment in Benjamin, who had failed to show gratitude, even after the life-saving kidney donation they had facilitated for him. I felt fortunate for their kindness and had gratefully accepted their offer. Benjamin, visibly shaken, grew pale and enraged. He protested vehemently, calling the arrangement unfair and corrupt, even threatening to take legal action. I remained calm, explaining that his financial recklessness was the reason he found himself in this situation, and that my parents had made a perfectly reasonable decision. I also questioned whether he could afford a legal battle, given his history of mismanaging money. Determined to push him further, I warned him that I would claim every penny I was owed, including for emotional distress and child support. I made it clear that I would go to any lengths to ensure he fulfilled his responsibilities. Overcome with guilt and regret, Benjamin pleaded for mercy, but it was too late. I told him, without hesitation, that I would relentlessly pursue justice for the insults he had thrown at me and for the neglect he had shown toward our daughter, Nanae, and myself. As Benjamin and his mistress hurried away, the realtor who had witnessed the entire exchange approached me, offering his gratitude for handling the uncomfortable situation with such poise. The resolution, though tense, was essential to restore respect and accountability within our family dynamic. Once the misunderstandings were cleared up, I felt ready to embrace a fresh start. Holding my daughter, Nancy's hand, we walked home together. She thanked me for standing up for her, and in that moment, her smile filled me with determination. Silently, I vowed to always protect her, no matter what. The divorce from Benjamin proceeded without complication, bringing an end to a marriage weighed down by years of turmoil. To my surprise, it was finalized with little fanfare, making me reflect on why I had endured so much for so long. It became evident that Benjamin had wasted significant amounts of money on his affair, borrowing heavily to fund his indiscretions. Eventually, his mistress left him, unable to handle the financial instability he had created. At the same time, Benjamin's career took a downturn. His company, already struggling with material shortages, had to downsize, and he was among the first to be laid off. While unfortunate, it seemed his poor behavior and performance at home likely contributed to the decision. Now jobless, Benjamin struggled with part-time work and showed little effort to seek full-time employment. His life seemed to spiral downward as he lost his job, his lover, and his wife. Despite all my past efforts, including the sacrifice of donating a kidney to him, Benjamin had never appreciated my sacrifices. It felt like karma was finally catching up with him, and it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, I was moving forward, With the assets inherited from my in-laws, I decided to pursue a new path in illustration. It was Nancy's encouragement about my drawing skills that first sparked the idea, and soon I was receiving positive feedback from clients who appreciated the detail and precision in my work. I was determined to grow my client base and work hard to create a better future for Nancy and myself. This new chapter wasn't just a recovery from past wounds, it was a proactive step toward building a thriving future.